Welcome, everyone. Let's jump into a deep dive into the world of nutrition science.
That's good.
You guys sent in some really fascinating stuff for this one. Articles, research papers, and even a book called The Nutrient Necropolis.
Catchy title.
All right. Really grabs you. And it's no secret that nutrition advice can be, well, confusing sometimes. 1 minute, something is good for you. The next minute, it's like the worst thing ever.
Yeah. It's hard to know what to believe.
Exactly. So I'm hoping this deep dive can help us cut through all the noise and figure out what's really going on with how our bodies use food.
Great goal. And I think the Nutrient Necropolis actually gives us a good foundation to understand those core principles. It all starts with, well, digestion. Back to basics.
Yeah, makes sense. You know, the book's description of digestion was actually really eye-opening for me. Like, we all know we chew our food, but I never really thought about, saliva, like what it's really doing.
It's pretty amazing. Saliva is not just there to moisten food. It actually has enzymes that start breaking down carbs right there in your mouth.
Oh, wow. So it's like pre-digestion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your body's getting a head start on the whole process. And then once you swallow, the food goes down the esophagus to your stomach. And, well, things get a bit more intense there.
Intense. Okay, now I'm really intrigued.
Well, your stomach acts like a powerful mixer. It churns the food, breaks it down even further, and it also mixes in, gastric juices. That includes hydrochloric acid, which helps dissolve proteins and also kills any harmful bacteria.
Hydrochloric acid. Wow, that's pretty hard.
It is. But don't worry, your stomach lining can handle it. And this acidic environment is, well, it's essential for creating what's called chyme. That's what moves on to the small intestine.
Gotcha. So the stomach does a lot of the heavy lifting. But the small intestine is where all the nutrient absorption happens, right? The real magic.
Right. The small intestine is like this long, winding road where different nutrients are absorbed at different points. It's a really efficient system.
Really makes you think about giving your body the right fuel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If we're putting in junk, well, our system has to work overtime to get what little good stuff is in there.
Yeah, for sure. The quality of the food we eat directly impacts how well our bodies can actually use those nutrients.
Speaking of quality, I know a lot of people get hung up on calorie counting when they're trying to eat better or lose weight, but the Nutrient Necropolis actually kind of pushes back on that whole idea,
Yeah.
saying that not all calories are equal.
That was a big takeaway for me, too. The book uses a great example comparing a donut to an avocado. They might have, roughly the same calories, but their effects on your body are totally different.
Exactly. The donut, with all those refined carbs and sugar, spikes your blood sugar, can lead to fat storage. But the avocado, packed with healthy fats and fiber, it gives you sustained energy, keeps you feeling full longer.
Really highlights how important it is to look beyond just the calorie. A calorie is just a unit of energy. It doesn't tell you anything about, the actual nutritional value of the food.
So it's like trying to run your car on the wrong type of fuel, I guess.
Yeah.
Sure, it might keep running for a while, but eventually it's going to cause problems.
That's a good way to put it. Our bodies need a balance of nutrients to function properly. Just cutting calories without, considering the quality of those calories, it's not a sustainable way to be healthy.
All right, so we've talked about digestion and the calorie counting thing. Let's move on to another topic that always seems to cause debate. Protein. There's just so much conflicting info out there about how much we actually need.
Yeah, there is. And the Nutrient Necropolis addresses that directly. The book says that most Western diets already give us more than enough protein. And, eating too much can actually have downsides.
That's interesting because we're always hearing about needing more protein, especially for building muscle. So what's the real story with protein and muscle growth?
Well, protein is definitely essential for muscle growth and repair. It's the building block of our tissues. But the amount we need isn't as high as people think. Studies have shown that, going way up in protein needs doesn't necessarily mean more muscle.
So it's not just about quantity?
Nope. It's about quality and timing, too. The type of protein you eat and when you eat it can affect how your body uses it. For example, animal-based protein, like from meat and eggs, has all 9 essential amino acids. But plant-based proteins might be missing 1 or more.
So if you're vegan or vegetarian, you have to be more careful about combining different plant-based proteins to make sure you're getting all those essential amino acids.
Yeah, exactly. There are some, classic combinations like beans and rice or lentils and quinoa that can give you a complete amino acid profile.
And what about the downsides of too much protein? I think the Nutrient Necropolis mentioned something about kidney strength.
Right, that's something to consider. Moderate protein intake is generally safe for healthy people, but eating way too much protein can put stress on your kidneys, especially if you already have kidney problems.
But like most things in nutrition, it's about finding that balance,
Yeah.
the right amount of protein for you.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all answer.
We've covered a lot of ground already. We've looked at digestion, the calorie myth, and the whole protein puzzle.
And we're just getting started. There's so much more to uncover in the world of nutrition.
Welcome back, everyone. Ready to keep digging into these nutrition mysteries. Last time, we're talking about protein and how much we actually need.
Yeah, how those more is better messages aren't always, the whole truth.
Right. Our bodies are these complex machines, and we need to understand how to fuel them right. And speaking of fuel, let's talk about another macronutrient that gets a lot of attention: carbs. So many diets out there just demonize carbs. But the Nutrient Necropolis, it takes a more balanced approach, I think.
It does. The book, it really stresses that carbohydrates are our body's main energy source. It's not about avoiding them completely, but more about choosing the right kinds.
Okay, that makes sense. So what's the key difference we need to understand when it comes to carbs?
The book breaks it down really well into simple and complex carbs. Simple carbs are the ones you find in processed foods, sugary drinks, and refined grain. Those are digested really quickly, leading to spikes in your blood sugar.
And those spikes are what we want to avoid, right? Because they can lead to those energy crashes, cravings, and even bigger health problems down the line.
Exactly. But complex carbs, the ones you find in whole grains, fruits, veggies, legumes, they're digested much slower. So you get a steadier energy release and your blood sugar stays more stable.
So it's like choosing a slow burning fuel versus something that just flares up and burns out quickly.
That's a great analogy, and that's where the glycemic index, or GI, comes in. It helps us understand how different carb-containing foods affect our blood sugar.
Okay, I've heard of the glycemic index, but honestly, I'm still not totally clear on what it actually means. Can you explain it?
Sure. The GI is basically a ranking system. Foods get a number based on how fast they raise blood sugar compared to pure glucose, which has a GI of 100. High GI foods cause a big, quick spike in blood sugar, while low GI foods cause a slower, more gradual rise.
So if we're trying to avoid those energy crashes, keep our blood sugar stable, we want to choose more low GI foods.
Exactly. And the Nutrient Necropolis has some really good examples, like white bread and watermelon. Even though they seem totally different, both have a high GI, so they're digested fast and can cause those sugar spikes.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought watermelon would be so high in the GI.
It's a good reminder that even natural sugars can really affect our blood sugar level. Now, on the other end, things like lentils, quinoa, and most vegetables have a low GI. They're great choices for, keeping your energy up.
It makes you think about how often we label foods as good or bad, but it's really more complicated than that, right? It's about how different foods affect us and choosing the ones that help us reach our health goals.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's about making smart choices and finding what works for you. And the GI is just one tool to help us do that.
Right. It's not about obsessing over numbers, but more about using that information to make better choices.
Exactly. You have to think about the GI along with other things like portion size and, your overall diet.
All right. So we've tackled carbs and the glycemic index. Now let's move on to something that's really changed in how we think about it: fats. For so long, fat was the villain in the nutrition world. But now it seems like some types of fat are actually good for you.
There's definitely been a shift in how we see fats. And the Nutrient Necropolis, it does a great job of explaining the different types of fat and, busting that myth that all fat is bad.
Yeah. The book argues that healthy fats aren't just okay, for us, they're essential.
Totally. Fats play a big role in hormone production, cell structure, even brain health. They help us absorb certain vitamins like A, D, E, and K.
So which types of fat should we be eating?
Unsaturated fats are the stars here. They're the heart-healthy ones found in avocados, nuts, seeds, olive oil, and fatty fish like salmon. They're liquid at room temperature and have been linked to all sorts of good things like better cholesterol levels and lower risk of heart disease.
What about saturated fat? I know those are the ones we're always told to avoid, but I've heard there's some debate about whether they're really that bad for you.
It's true. The research on saturated fat is it's more complicated than we used to think. Some studies link them to heart disease, but others suggest the connection might not be so clear-cut.
So what do we do? Should we avoid saturated fat altogether, or are they okay in moderation?
Most health organizations still recommend limiting saturated fats, mostly found in animal products like meat, poultry, full-fat dairy, and also some tropical oils like coconut and palm oil.
And then there are the fats we definitely want to steer clear of, trans fat.
Right. Trans fats are, they're artificially created through a process called hydrogenation. It basically turns liquid oils into solid fats. They're the worst kind of fat. Raise your bad cholesterol, lower your good cholesterol, and really increase your risk of heart disease.
I know those are the ones found in a lot of processed foods, baked goods, fried foods. It's definitely a good idea to check those labels carefully.
Absolutely. Even if a label says 0 grams trans fat, you should still look at the ingredient. If you see partially hydrogenated oil, That means there are trans fats in there.
Okay, so with fats, it's all about making those informed choices. We want to focus on those good unsaturated fats, be mindful of our saturated fat intake, and just avoid trans fats as much as we can.
That's it. And remember, even healthy fats have a lot of calories. So, moderation is still key.
We've covered a lot in this section. Different types of carbs, how they affect our blood sugar, and the world of fats, the good and the bad. But there's still more to discover. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on quite a journey so far, exploring all these fascinating aspects of nutrition. Last time we tackled those myths about fats and really dove into carbs and that whole glycemic index thing.
It's amazing how much misinformation is out there, But once you start understanding the basics, well, it makes healthy choices so much easier.
Totally agree. Reading the Nutrient Necropolis really helped me connect the dots between what I eat and how my body reacts.
It's powerful, isn't it? And that actually brings us to a topic that's often overlooked, hydration.
Hydration. Yeah, we all know we need to drink water. But is there more to it than just downing 8 glasses a day?
There is. The Nutrient Necropolis actually challenges that whole 8x8 rule. It argues that our needs, well, they vary a lot depending on things like how active we are, the climate, even what we eat.
That makes sense. If you're sweating a lot during a workout or, living in a hot place, you're going to need more fluids than someone who's mostly sitting around in a cooler environment.
Exactly. The book really emphasizes listening to your body, using thirst as your guide. If you're thirsty, well, your body's telling you it needs more fluid. It's that simple.
And we get fluids from food too, right?
Absolutely. Fruits and veggies, especially the ones with a lot of water, like watermelon, cucumber, spinach, they can contribute a good amount to your daily fluid intake.
So it's not just about chugging water all day. It's about being aware of where fluids are coming from.
Right. And the book also says that those caffeinated drinks like coffee and tea, they're not actually dehydrating.
Oh, that's good news. I love my coffee. So having coffee or tea in moderation, that actually counts towards our hydration.
It does. Caffeine has a bit of a diuretic effect, but the amount of fluid you're getting from the coffee or tea, well, it outweighs any potential fluid loss.
Shoot. Okay, moving on to something I find really fascinating, the gut microbiome.
Oh, it's such a captivating area of research. The Nutrient Necropolis has a whole chapter on this amazing ecosystem in our digestive system.
It's crazy to think that we have trillions of bacteria living in our guts.
Millions. And they do so much more than we ever thought. They're not just, hanging out in there.
Right. It's amazing how much those gut bacteria can affect things, from digestion and immunity to mental health and even our risk of chronic diseases.
It really is remarkable. And the book emphasizes that what we eat, well, it really shapes the makeup of our gut microbiome.
So a diet high in processed foods, sugar, unhealthy fats, that can mess up the balance of bacteria in our gut. And that can lead to, all kinds of problems.
Exactly. That imbalance, it's called dysbiose, and it's been linked to inflammation, digestive issues, a weaker immune system, and even mood disorders.
But the good news is we can help our gut microbiome by making better food choices. Mm-hmm. Right?
Absolutely. The Nutrient Necropolis talks about eating fiber-rich foods, fruits, vegetables, and fermented foods like yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi. All those things promote a diverse and healthy gut microbiome.
It's like we're creating a thriving garden in our guts.
I love that analogy. And the book also talks about probiotics and prebiotics. Probiotics are, they're live bacteria, the good kind that you can find in those fermented foods we mentioned. They help to replenish and diversify our gut flora. Probiotics, on the other hand, those are like food for the good bacteria, help them to thrive.
So it's a two-pronged approach. Introduce the good bacteria and then give them what they need to grow.
That's it.
Yeah.
And by doing that, we can really support our overall health and well-being.
It shows you how everything's connected. It's not just about individual nutrients, but how our diet, our gut bacteria, and our health all work together.
Totally agree. It's that holistic approach that the Nutrient Necropolis really promotes.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about something that's often seen as the enemy of good health, processed food.
Yeah, this is where the Nutrient Necropolis really doesn't hold back. The book lays out all the dangers hiding in those, brightly colored packages and those convenient meals.
I know. It's so easy to fall for the convenience and the marketing of processed foods. But the book really makes you think about the potential consequences.
It explains how processing takes away a lot of the natural nutrients in food. And then they add a bunch of, unhealthy stuff like sugar, salt, artificial flavors, color, and preservatives.
Sure, those things might make the food taste better and last longer, but they can really harm our health in the long run.
Exactly. The Nutrient Necropolis links eating processed foods to inflammation, weight gain, and a higher risk of those chronic diseases like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and even some cancer.
It's a good reminder to to be more aware of what we're putting into our bodies.
Absolutely. And the book gives some good advice on how to, navigate the grocery store and make better choices. It tells us to really read those food labels, be careful of those long ingredient lists with all those words we can't even pronounce, and just choose whole, unprocessed foods whenever we can.
It's about going back to the basics, real food over the processed stuff.
Exact. And even small changes can make a big difference over time.
Okay, now let's talk about inflammation. We know it's our body's natural response to, injury or infection, but the Nutrient Necropolis describes chronic inflammation as this silent fire burning inside us.
That's a powerful image, and it's true. Chronic inflammation, the kind that can be triggered by stress, a bad diet, not enough sleep, and all those environmental toxins, it's a major contributor to lots of chronic diseases.
So we can't just ignore it, right? We have to be proactive about dealing with it.
Absolutely. And the book really highlights how much our diet can either fuel that inflammation or help reduce it.
So which foods are the biggest culprits when it comes to making inflammation worse?
The Nutrient Necropolis says it's the processed foods, sugary drinks, refined carbs, and unhealthy fat. All those things trigger those inflammatory responses in our bodies.
And on the flip side, are there specific foods that can actually help, calm that inflammatory fire?
There are. The book talks about all sorts of anti-inflammatory foods. Fatty fish with omega-3s, leafy greens, berries full of antioxidants, and spices like turmeric.
Sounds like a delicious and colorful way to fight inflammation.
It is, and it really reinforces that idea that food can be medicine, if we choose the right foods.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about the obesity epidemic. It's a huge problem, a global health crisis. The Nutrient Necropolis takes a hard look at how our diet plays a role in this epidemic. It really points to processed foods and sugary drinks as the main culprits.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore that connection, Those foods are often made to be super tasty and even addictive. They kind of hijack our taste buds and those reward pathways in our brain.
It's like they're designed to keep us wanting more, even when we're not really hungry.
Exact. And the book also talks about how portion sizes have gotten bigger and bigger at restaurants and even at home. That definitely plays a part too.
So it's not just about what we eat, but how much we eat.
Right. The Nutrient Necropolis encourages us to be more mindful about eating, pay attention to our body's signals when we're hungry and full, and practice portion control.
It's about getting back in touch with our bodies, remembering that food is supposed to nourish us, not just entertain us.
I love that way of thinking about it. It's about having a healthy relationship with food.
All right, let's move on to something that's especially relevant for people who are physically active, optimizing our diet for performance. I'm always trying to find ways to fuel my workouts better, and Nutrient Necropolis had some really good advice on that.
It does. The book talks about macronutrient timing, which means strategically eating carbs, protein, and fats at certain times to help you reach your training goals.
So it's not just about eating healthy in general. It's about matching our food choices to how active we are.
Right. Like having carbs before a workout can top off your energy stores, and protein after a workout, well, that helps your muscles recover and grow.
It's like fine-tuning our nutrition to perform at our best.
Exact. And the book also highlights micronutrients, things like iron, calcium, and B vitamins. Those are really important for athletes.
Those are the ones that help with oxygen transport, muscle function, and energy production, right?
Exactly. If you're deficient in those micronutrients, it can hurt your performance and even lead to health problems. So it's important to make sure we're getting enough, through our diet, or if we need to, through supplements.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about the mental and emotional side of eating. The Nutrient Necropolis has a really interesting section on how stress, emotions, and even social situations can affect what we choose to eat.
It's something a lot of people don't really think about, but it's so important to understand how those things, our mental and emotional state, can influence our eating habits.
The book explains that stress can, trigger those cravings for sugary, fatty comfort food. Yeah. It's like our brains are looking for a quick hit of dopamine to balance out those stress hormones.
Exactly. It's a primal instinct to want comfort and pleasure when we're stressed out.
And then there's emotional eating. That's when we eat to cope with difficult emotions, sadness, anxiety, boredom, that kind of thing.
It's a way to numb those feelings, but it's only temporary, and it usually leads to guilt and regret afterwards.
Yeah, and it can create this vicious cycle where we rely on food more and more to deal with our emotions.
The book encourages us to, be more aware of those patterns and find healthier ways to manage stress and our emotions. It's about dealing with the root cause instead of just masking it with food.
Right. And let's not forget about social situations. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to overeat at parties or, when you're out with friends?
Oh, for sure. There's that social pressure to like indulge and do what everyone else is doing.
It's like we're wired to want to fit in, even when it comes to food.
The Nutrient Necropolis talks about that and encourages us to be mindful of those social influences and to make conscious choices that are in line with our health goals.
It's about taking control of our eating habits and not letting our environment dictate them.
Exactly. It's about being empowered to make choices that support our well-being.
Okay, let's talk about how our nutritional needs change as we get older. The Nutrient Necropolis stresses how important it is to adapt our diets, because our metabolism slows down and we might have some nutrient deficiency.
It's a big part of aging healthfully. As we get older, we naturally lose some muscle mass and our metabolism slows down. So we need fewer calories to stay at the same weight.
But that doesn't mean we can just eat whatever we want.
Right.
We still need to make sure we're getting all the essential nutrients.
Right. The book says that as we age, we should focus on nutrient-rich foods instead of those calorie-dense ones. Protein becomes even more important for keeping our muscles and bones strong.
And calcium and vitamin D are crucial for preventing osteoporosis. So that's a bigger risk as we get older.
Exactly. And antioxidants, they protect our cells from damage, which can contribute to age-related decline.
So it's all about adjusting our diet to support our body's changing needs.
Exactly. It's about nourishing ourselves for a long and healthy life.
And let's touch on something that's often marketed as this quick fix for weight loss, diet pill. The Nutrient Necropolis really takes a critical look at those products, exposing how dangerous and ineffective they can be.
We always have to be careful of those promises of quick fixes. The diet pill industry often takes advantage of, people's insecurities and their desire to lose weight fast. But the truth is, there's no magic solution.
Yeah. The book explains how a lot of diet pills have stimulants, and those can have some nasty side effects like a racing heart, anxiety, trouble sleeping.
And in a lot of cases, these pills haven't even been properly tested for safety or if they even work. They might make it seem like you're making progress, but they often come with a big price tag, not just financially, but for your health too.
The Nutrient Necropolis encourages us to be skeptical of those claims and to focus on lifestyle changes that are sustainable, things that will support our long-term health and well-being.
Yeah, I agree. It's about making smart choices and understanding that real health is a journey, not a destination.
Okay, last but not least, let's talk about the environmental impact of what we eat. The Nutrient Necropolis brings up the connection between our diet and the health of our planet.
It's a connection we can't ignore anymore. The book talks about all the environmental costs of meat production, like deforestation, greenhouse gases, water usage, and pollution.
It really makes you think about how our food choices have these bigger consequences.
It does. The book encourages us to eat more plant-based meals, cut down on food waste, and choose sustainably sourced foods whenever we can.
It's about understanding that our health and the health of our planet they're connected.
Exactly. It's about making choices that are good for both us and the environment.
Wow. This deep dive has been it's been quite a journey. We've covered so much: digestion, the gut microbiome, hydration, processed foods, how our diet affects our health and even the planet.
It's been a fascinating exploration. I hope it's helped everyone listening to make more informed decisions about their nutrition.
And if you're interested in learning even more, I highly recommend the Nutrient Necropolis. It's a really insightful book. Makes you think, and it'll definitely broaden your understanding of nutrition science.
You can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
Thanks for joining us on this epic deep dive into nutrition science. Until next time, stay curious, eat well, and keep exploring.